Hello fun people, I'm Isaac Carlson, and today I want to break down everything you need to know going into the Monsters Inc. sequel series Monsters at Work, coming to Disney Plus this summer. I like to emphasize that because the show hasn't gotten a ton of promotion yet, but it is coming. It's a show taking some good notes from Tangle the series and is placing its news story in between 2 points in time that we've already been introduced to. We're going back to Monsters Inc. before Boo's door was reconstructed, but after the day Waternoose was arrested. The team at Walt Disney Television Animation is going to bring us into Monstropolis again, with Mike and Sully being the new leaders of Monsters Inc. Sully being the CEO, and Mike taking on the role of Chief Executive Vice Deputy Administrative Director of Comedy Resources Management, a role he made up for himself. Caitlin Ritter, one of the directors on Monsters at Work, has alluded on Twitter that Mike Wazowski memes are coming again, and I'm all for that. It feels like the ludicrous new title for himself is just the start of the goofs and the gaffes with him. But while the original duo is going to be working on transforming Monsters Incorporated into a profitable provider of energy again, the real focus in this show is going to be on a new cast of characters, because the show is intended to be a workplace comedy and kind of a sitcom-styled way of re-entering the world. At the center of Monsters at Work is a character known as Tylor Tuskmon, who was originally dreamed up as a mechanic and was small, lanky, and yellow on the original poster, but has since been reimagined as a confident recent graduate of Monsters University. If you need a refresher, that was where Mike and Sully first met in their prequel movie Monsters University. That was where they originally tried to become scares until they were of course kicked out. But unfortunately, even though Tylor graduated and was a top scarer in his class, the framework of how energy is collected in the monster world will be turned on its head on the same day he arrives at Monsters Inc. While he was prepared to be a scarer, he will show up on the day the company switches over to laughter, which means that he, along with every other scarer, will be repositioned throughout the company so they can have the opportunity to learn to become jokesters, which is the new name for the people collecting energy. And for Tylor, he gets relocated to the Monsters Inc. facilities team, otherwise known as MIFT. Now, from what we are aware of, Miss Flint, who we saw in Monsters Inc. training monsters to become scarers, will be leading up the efforts to transform the funniest monsters into jokesters. But until Tylor figures that position out, he will be working under the leadership of Fritz, a small blue one-eyed snouted creature who is a bit of a scatterbrain. In the MIFT team, there will also be Val Little, a furry enthusiastic creature who kind of resembles Art from Monsters University, Cutter, a crab-like domineering rule follower, and Duncan, a multi-eyed and winged green opportunistic schemer. We will also be shown Tylor's parents in the show, but currently we only know that his mother's name is Millie, and is a more progressive and supporting monster in Tylor's life compared to his father. Tylor's father apparently doesn't have a ton of faith in the idea of laughter being a very legitimate form of power that will last very long. He's convinced that laughter and laugh lores are all just kind of a fad that will eventually fade away, but of course that definitely won't happen, although it might seem difficult to believe when the entire monster world was built off of screams. I'm sure it's hard to understand that laughs are literally 10 times more powerful than scream energy, although that'll just be something he'll have to internalize eventually, because the world is just going to keep changing around him regardless of what he wants. The backdrop of the show, though, will be, of course, Monsters Inc. and Monstropolis, which means that we are going to get a much deeper look at the facilities around this company. Specifically, as a member of the facilities team, Tylor is going to be primarily within the machine shop right across from the main entrance and the employee center. This team will be doing things like repairing door frames, going amongst underground corridors, ensuring that the laugh floors stay online, and occasionally sitting in an office space. Oh, and I guess there's going to be a bowling episode, so we have that to look forward to as well. I guess Monsters Inc. has some sweet amenities, so I'm excited to see that too. Also, the producers of the show clarify that each one of the triangle-like buildings on Monsters Inc. property are the actual energy collecting floors, and that the one Mike and Sully were on was just one of dozens. The massive building behind the laugh floors is just for the door vault. I didn't fully comprehend that, so I figured I'd pass that along too. Monsters Inc. is just a much more complicated business than I initially realized, but that's just kind of a fact of life. The producers of the show did a plethora of research into actual power plants to see how they look and work. And currently I even have a friend who's going to school for building systems engineering, where he learns about sustainable and effective building practices and energy management. So I have gotten a bit of exposure through him of how insane the electric grid is. I feel like that would be an interesting concept to see explored and developed more, although more than anything, I just want a story with characters that we can relate to, and it sure seems like that's what we're going to get. In a world where people are graduating from college in an unstable, uncertain, and constantly changing world, I think the stresses of Tylor are going to resonate with a lot of people. Inner turmoil, anxiety, and a nebulous future seems more commonly spoken about today than I've ever experienced before, and I've been feeling that more than ever too. I think it's a logical extension after Monsters University to show what people go through after they're done existing in the education system. We will get to see how a monster grapples with his confusing place in the world, and pretty soon we'll get to see this new Disney television animation project. Yeah, it's true. Monsters at Work isn't a show produced by Pixar Animation Studios, even though it has all of the original voice cast returning, has Steve Anderson, the director of Meet the Robinsons, directing, and it's using 3D animation. But because it isn't being made by one of the big animation studios, it hasn't really been talked about much, including during the Disney Investor Day from 2020. Even though it's a series based off of an award-winning film that at one point was the top-grossing animated film of all time, it wasn't mentioned at all because for some reason a sequel to Monsters Inc. that isn't made by Pixar was less important than other animated projects like bringing to life the real housewives of Little Rodentia and ensuring we knew about Pixar Popcorn, which is just 10 Pixar micro shorts that total to less than one episode of Monsters at Work. Listen, I'm not saying those projects are inherently bad. I'm sure the animators and creative team that's working on them are working tirelessly to make the concepts as great as they can be. But I also believe that Monsters at Work has a team that cares just as much and has likely been working on a fraction of the budget as the teams at Disney Animation and Pixar. I'm just really excited for this show. I have been ever since it was announced because the Monsters Inc. films are some of my favorite Pixar films and the world is just incredible to me. And I'm just really hoping that the show gets the support it needs to allow an audience to grow around it, because from everything I've seen, Disney doesn't often prioritize Disney television animation. I mean, for one, Disney doesn't have a ton of animated shows on Disney Plus yet, like Buzz Lightyear of Star Command and Aladdin the series, and even modern high-quality shows like DuckTales and Tangled the series, which have some of the best stories coming out of Disney overall in years, have mainly been brushed aside with little marketing or care about the series. And I don't want that for Monsters at Work. I'm looking forward to seeing Mike and Sully's story continue, and I'm intrigued by Tylor and the new monsters stories beginning. And that's all happening on July 2nd of this year. Fun people, make sure to subscribe for Monsters at Work discussions this summer and let me know what aspects of the show you're most excited about, along with any other theories you have that you'd like me to discuss in the future. Check out my podcast that's linked down below for expanded discussions and exclusive interviews with cast members and fun people. And finally, as always, thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching and have a magical day.